Let's give you the latest on Ukraine, where Russia's war is now into its fifth year, and a development that might give Volodymyr Zelensky some vital leverage over the United States and its Gulf allies. First, let's give you the latest on the ground in Ukraine this Thursday. A prisoner swap has taken place. 200 from each side have changed camps. It's the first part of a deal that should see up to 500 of each side sent home. The two sides agreed to the exchange during talks in Geneva last month, one of the few areas of cooperation between the warring countries. In Kherson, Ukrainian firefighters tackling the aftermath of a Russian strike. Fragments of explosives dropped from the drone that was used to carry out this attack were found nearby. This Thursday, Russia says it's captured a village in the Donbass called Yarova. This is in the east of the Donbass. At this stage, we can't independently verify Russia's claims. And the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the United States and its allies in the Middle East are seeking Ukraine's expertise in countering Iran's Shahed drones. Ukraine has been attacked by Shahed drones supplied by Iran to Russia almost every night since the full-scale invasion was launched in February 2022. Zelensky said this Thursday that the Druzhba pipeline that pumps Russian oil into Europe and was damaged by Russian attacks may only be operational after another 4 to 6 weeks. That, of course, has made the likes of Viktor Orban of Hungary extremely angry, and one of the reasons why he's trying to block the 90 billion euro aid deal that the EU has put together to help Ukraine's existential fight. Let's get the analysis and bring you Peter Zalmayev. Peter, of course, is director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative. He's joining us live from Kyiv. As always, Peter, great to have you with us. It seems ironic, doesn't it, that the United States is now seeking Ukraine's help in combating drones, given, of course, how Trump has withdrawn 99% of any aid to Ukraine.
Indeed, it's an ironic twist of fate, and there's a bittersweet moment here that Ukrainians, of course, experienced when the Iranian Ayatollah was taken out of the game. Of course, the implications of this are yet to be known, and there are many different factors that might actually complicate, our situation. But just the immediate moment of that, recalling how Russia, in fact, started bombarding and attacking civilians in Ukraine in earnest with the help precisely of Iranian drones. Whether, once again, taking the whole regime out of this game will be instrumental to Ukraine is another thing, because Russia is now producing these drones by the license that they have from the Iranians. They've learned to do it on their own. But it's a simple fact that, the first massive casualties in this war were suffered with the active help by the Iranian regime, and that also includes the ballistic missiles, Fateh and Zulfugar. So you cannot blame Ukrainians for just rejoicing at the news, at least initially.
So perhaps Volodymyr Zelensky now having the cards, to use Trump's phrase of February the 28th last year, when he went about and basically verbally attacked Zelensky in the White House, the situation perhaps changing. And what might be interesting, Peter, I suppose, is how the Gulf state allies of the United States react, because they are the ones who are really now under most attack from these drones.
Indeed, and that could be a perfect storm for the world economy. We're already seeing the contours of it, and it's, of course, a threat to Donald Trump. We all know that elections in America, with only slight exaggeration, are settled at the pump, so to speak. Price of gas, as they say in America, is very important. And Ukraine has the cards not only in that it has learned the ways of this 21st century warfare with asymmetrical warfare with drones like no one else. Only Russia is the only other player. We are the two most advanced, militarily speaking, nations. America cannot afford to keep, shooting down these, relatively inexpensive drones with missiles that may be worth millions of dollars. So that, plus the showdown that German Chancellor Merz had in Washington, where he actually said, you want our moral, logistical, political support of your operation against Iran, you really need to meet us halfway when it comes to Ukraine.
Can you give us, without giving away any state secrets, because I wouldn't expect you to do that, Peter, can you give us some insight into how Ukraine has managed to construct this expertise in drone technology this, obviously it's about necessity. Ukraine needed to do that. But can you give us any insight into sort of what's behind it all, how it's happened, and how far it goes?
It's a very elegant, good, modern term of crowdsourcing. Of course, from the very beginning of this war, why it has really captured the world's imagination. It was a much smaller nation fighting for the most, romantic of ideals. Just the survival of the nation. The indomitable spirit and all of these things. And the only way to stay in the game has been to do it asymmetrically, to involve players in the civil society, but also just individuals who are good with their hands to start this MacGyvering process of making inexpensive flying objects that would be able to, if not take on the Russian army, at least to slow down significantly its advance. This is a very good example of why a democracy in the long run would prevail against an autocracy, even though, as we've seen over the last 4 years, autocracies and dictatorships do have, at least initially, an advantage when it comes to decisions made in wartime. And our allies have demonstrated, unfortunately, that a democracy and a confederate sort of format like the European Union can sometimes be an impediment to quick and effective decisions.
Let's remind everybody, Peter, that whilst we're talking about these matters, you're expecting another night of attacks from Russia. The technology that we're talking about perhaps in some way transferring, or the expertise transferring to those Gulf states to protect them, and of course to help the United States to fight these drones. You're putting it to work every night in Ukraine to fend off the drones being sent by Russia. So let's remind people of that. Can we talk about the Druzhba oil pipeline, which is another issue which is perhaps getting in the way, in some way, of Ukraine getting this 90 billion euro aid deal from the EU. Viktor Orban unhappy that the oil isn't coming through that he wants to buy from Russia. He, of course, is Putin's great friend. That's Hungary's Prime Minister. Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, as well, joining in the same song in terms of saying this is wrong, Ukraine can do this quicker. What is your take on that situation? Because clearly there is an issue there. Volodymyr Zelensky said it could take a number of weeks, perhaps months, before it's open.
Well, these countries have to be weaned of their, dependence on this cheap Russian heroin type substance to which you get addicted, cheap gas. This is what we had in Germany under Angela Merkel's rule, and these countries have not been able to make that break. It of course allows them to win elections. It gives them some flexibility with the voters. It's time for them to grow up, and I think that was part of the conversation that the German chancellor had with Donald Trump, is that we have to rein in these two recalcitrant members who sometimes seem to be carrying water for our nemesis Moscow. These funds have to be released. Of course, you only wonder why they've been allowed to do it so long. Right now, the answer is with Washington. Washington has a certain say-so in the matter. And I think this would mean that compromise that Mr. Merz was looking when he went to Washington. Call off your dogs, call off Bratislava and Budapest. Let's give Ukraine the money it needs to continue funding its economy and once again continuing to resist the enemy, which it's been doing quite successfully, despite the fact that we had the worst, hardest winter to date since Ukraine's independence.
Indeed, I was going to ask you as a final question, but I'll bring it forward. How are you coping? Because clearly everybody, yourself included, have to cope with the very difficulties not having heating, not having hot water, not having the supplies that everybody here takes for granted. How are you coping?
Well, I have to be honest, I can't take the mantle of a martyr, because at least I'm flexible leaving the country, and I'm able to attend conferences in European capitals, etc. But a lot of Ukrainian men my age are not able to leave. They've been in this situation for 4 years, which progressively gets worse. And people, of course, update their standards of normal. People put on very visible displays of defiance, such as a rave on ice, electronic music one-day festival that took place on the frozen river in Kiev. And this was some of the coldest winter on record in the last probably 2 decades, etc. And we've weathered this winter. Once again, Vladimir Putin has demonstratively suffered a setback.
Peter Zalmayev, always a pleasure to speak to you, sir. Glad to see you looking so well.
Likewise.
Director of the Eurasia Democracy Initiative, frequent guest here on France 24, I am pleased to say. And good luck to you, sir. Please stay safe. Peter Zalmayev joining us there live from Kyiv. Great to see you, sir. Thank you very much indeed.